What's up, everyone? We're back. I'm Dr. Shah. Welcome back to Doctorly Unhinged.
I'm Dr. Maxfield.
In this episode, we got a lot of heavy hitters. So, of course, quick life update. We'll talk about our product of the day. I'll have to think of something really quickly for that. And then we're going to go into 3 heavy-hitting topics. 1, California could potentially ban the sale of retinol and AHAs, alpha hydroxy acids. Then we're going to be talking about Kelly Slater, who I believe is a surfer, who has now launched a skincare brand, and what does that mean? And then a Pfizer Duchenne gene therapy, Duchenne muscular dystrophy. We're going to get into some of the advancements in healthcare, and we have some things to sprinkle in between all of that. So let's get into it. Any major life updates, Dr. Maxfield?
No, thankfully. Again, just steady, stable. A lot of family events this year. I gotta talk to you about this, but end of the year stuff with kids is kind of chaotic. It's like, there's a school party here, an end of the year thing here. It's an all day event here. It's a lot to try to plan around. So it's been all right.
Yeah, this time of the year, people start to do a lot more. So it's more parties and more events and weddings and so that kind of stuff happens, which is always a fun time of the year. It almost feels like the most social time of the year, the spring. So spring going into summer. So, exciting, but at the same time, if you're an introvert, it can be a lot. No major updates for me. Like I said, I've been kind of locked in fully on Remedy lately. So we sold out of our body product in 36 hours.
The KP product?
KP, yeah.
That's crazy. You sold out of that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Yep. And now our team is scrambling to get it back in stock. We're looking at a Thursday restock, which is incredible. The thing is that we anticipated off of the launch that we didn't have enough body products for the launch, because we knew what the demand was from the launch of the brand as a totality. So then we kind of knew that we wouldn't have enough product for the body launch. So we had ordered back at the launch the second batch. And that second batch is going to hit sometimes next week. So we're still accepting orders. And by the time you're listening to this, you should probably be able to place your next order for Remedy for body bumps. But a lot of people are taking a chance on it. So excited to hear any feedback that people have on the product and see how well it works for them.
Nice. Yeah, it's a stellar product. I still can't wait to see the packaging. Anyway, but good job. Congrats. That's incredible. People just can't buy anything from you. It's no lip product, no body product.
I know.
Pores going to be left out soon.
We got dark spots and pores, which are running a little bit low on inventory on both of those now. But we had big orders for those. So, but no, good things as a business, where the demand has been good. And most importantly for me is the reviews and feedback have been phenomenal. The products are truly working for people, and we're seeing probably the best results with the dark spot product in terms of just reviews and before and afters, which is really cool to see.
Nice. Those are amazing. All right. So first up, we have the news out of California, and this is coming on the heels.
Well, what about your product of the day?
Oh yeah, product of the day. Product of the day. So this actually kind of falls as a continuation of the unsexy products from last week. The Vanicream deodorant. It's unique in that it's one of the true-ish fragrance-free deodorants out there. It has 5 ingredients. It's also aluminum-free. If you wanted a free of everything deodorant that's pretty inexpensive, Vanicream, of course, delivers. And I'm going to bring them up later in maybe next week's conversation. But it's a good product and it works. If you look on Inky Decoder, it's a little confusing because they have something citrate in there and it says for perfuming. But Vanicream actually specifically lists on their website. It functionally actually works as deodorant. And I don't believe it's actually a dedicated perfuming ingredient either.
Very interesting. Yeah. This is one I have not personally used, but have recommended to a lot of my patients with sensitive skin. So I think when we were talking about deodorants, we were mentioning that there weren't a lot of good fragrance-free options. Vanicream actually as a brand performs pretty well for something that doesn't really get any attention on social media. From an actual in-store sales perspective. And I think that's probably mostly driven by derms
It's gotta be
in the office, because it doesn't get probably the love that it deserves as far as a brand that really is positioned well for sensitive skin.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. My product of the day.
Yeah, what's yours?
Let's see. What have I been using consistently across the board? Let's see. Supergoop Unseen Sunscreen. Let's call that product of the day. So Supergoop Unseen Sunscreen, just an overall great sunscreen. You've heard us talk about it a bunch of times before. Truly invisible product, and just has that sort of like matte primer feel to it. But the story with this and why it's product of the day is that Dr. Tomasian, who is a dermatologist, also in real life, but also on social media, and he's got an office in California if anyone's looking for a dermatologist in California, because we will be talking about California next. And so Dr. Tomasian is getting married this weekend in Miami, it turns out, and I'm in Miami. And he had a white party last night on the beach pre-wedding. And the white party is like, I'm in like a white suit. And, when you're wearing a white suit, you can't really wear like a tinted sunscreen because, the risk of it like leaking onto your collar is too high. So Supergoop Unseen came in to be very clutch for this white party. So shout out to Supergoop.
All right. Now the heart of this, California banning retinol, but not just retinol. It's also your alpha hydroxy acid. So Dr. Shaw, what is the why behind this? What is driving this movement?
Yeah, so this article is coming out of Happy, HAPPI. They're a really good industry magazine or publication. California bill would ban the sale of skincare products with retinoids, retinol, and AHAs to children under the age of 13. So this is a bill coming out of the California legislature, California AB 2491. And probably the thought process behind this is due to this new Sephora Kids phenomenon, which we've talked about before. And this idea that all of these young kids are really getting into these high active skincare products, and they're really too young to be using these products now. They're going into Sephora, they're destroying all of the testers, and they're using these products that are really going to irritate their skin barriers, especially your alpha hydroxy acids and retinoids, when you're using them for no purpose at all, right? So like we always say, like skincare is very purposeful, and you can use retinoids in your teenage years, especially if you have acne. But if you're just using it while your skin is fine, I really am against this for multiple reasons, and we can kind of go into the details there. But I believe that this is a reaction to this Sephora Kids phenomenon, and California really wants to try to limit the sales of these types of products to kids under the age of 13. And this kind of affects everybody because now you would need to show identification to prove your age.
Who has an ID showing that you're older than 13? Like, who has a 14-year-old ID?
It's a good point.
I don't actually know if that exists yet.
There really isn't. So, I mean, you can get an identification card when you're younger than 18, but truly, like most people get like a true government ID when they start to drive. So they get a driver's permit and then a driver's license. And that generally is like the age at which you would. So it's usually 16 before you would be able to have an actual identification card. And so probably the truth is this would be a ban for anybody under the age of 16, ultimately.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's how it would end up playing out. Now, I think this is actually a logical consideration. And the question really just goes back to, is this a conversation to have at home, or is this a governing, regulating body that needs to step in here? But just like you said, a lot of these skincare ingredients have found a lot of favor with young individuals, and they functionally really don't have a purpose for them, and they can be deleterious. They can be harmful to aggravate and irritate skin that doesn't actually benefit from these ingredients. And so that, again, I think the logic is there. And if you go to the bottom of this article too, it kind of talks about the other side of it as well. Like, quote, they said, it's well-intentioned, but it is a hastily drafted attempt to use legislature force to stop a social media trend. And that was from the statement by the Personal Care Products Council. So, there are going to be two sides to this whole argument again, but it really doesn't revolve around whether kids should be using these ingredients. It just revolves around how do we help them use the correct, allow them access to use the correct ingredients effectively, but limit over access to ingredients they don't need. And it's a deep conversation. And it is kind of a moment, it seems like, where just like, let's say, Pokemon cards, Pogs, for those who remember the very short time of Pogs 30 years ago. And then, makeup, chapstick, whatever. This is a moment where skincare is very popular now within the younger generation. And will it fade? Would it pass? Probably. Never completely, but it probably wouldn't be as popular as it is now 5 years from now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's no real benefit to be doing this at this age. And so people are, it's just going to be a fad like anything else. And we just happen to be in skincare, so we're talking about it. But otherwise, like you said, this is essentially like a Pog, a Furby, something like that. What were those like stuffed Beanie Babies? All those, exactly. And there's a kind of interesting quote from here. It says, during an April 23rd, 2024 hearing in the California State Assembly, 10-year-old Scarlett Goddard Strahan said she was swayed by influencers on TikTok and YouTube. She began buying products that were advertised as anti-wrinkle and brightening, and after using them, she experienced reactions like burns and bumps. I stopped using these products, but I still get these itchy and red bumps when I sweat and I'm out in the sun. And I'm worried I'm always going to be like this. I wish that I never tried these products, ultimately, is the summary of it. And so basically they brought in testimony from young kids who said that, I bought these products because I saw them on TikTok. And, I think the question of this is kind of a larger question of how much government control should we have over certain decision-making processes. And that can be extrapolated to many other issues we have in America today. But, I remember when they banned Big Gulps in New York, and it was like the banning the beverages type of thing to control obesity and the rise of diabetes that was coming out of just so much sugary beverages. And people were like, hey, I should be able to choose what I consume, essentially. But I do think for kids we have to do our best to protect them. But I think these products already at kind of baseline are expensive. And, really skincare products shouldn't be marketed towards anybody under the age of 13 anyway, under the age of 18 anyway. And even for brands, it really isn't a sustainable business model to target, you'll sell a bunch of products to young kids, and they'll use them maybe once or twice. But, as a beauty brand, you really want to build the refillable product model where people are buying products over and over again because they really love them and they really make a difference for their skin. So I feel even marketing to these young kids is not a wise long-term business strategy. It may give you a temporary lift, but I think it's not only dangerous for the kids, but I think it's not really a long-term business solution either.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I guess the movement I would say it probably started, within, as is usual, kids following the trend of the next generation up. It's just been the history of probably society since the beginning of time, as the teenagers look at the young adults who are, or even middle-aged, older adults, just trying to think back decades back, who is on the TV, who has been the socialite that everyone is looking at, who has been the royalty even longer back. And so, it's human nature, it seems like, for young individuals to want to personify what they see as they grow. And right now, again, that conversation has been skincare for the past few years before it was makeup. So it just, again, it's a bit of natural persuasion.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately how this bill would work if it passed is that both online and physical products in the store would have to have some type of labeling saying that this is not meant for anyone under the age of 13, and require people to provide a date of birth or otherwise confirm their age before purchasing. Online purchases would need to be made with credit cards that were not prepaid credit cards. So it would be somebody whose name is attached to it, and it would require the purchaser to verify their age and date of birth. So that could be interesting. It's sort of interesting. We were looking kind of at data out of the launch of Remedy, and where's our traffic coming from and where are people buying from. And actually, California was our biggest, and all 3 out of 4 of our products have retinol on them. So this could potentially affect us. And it turns out that 20%, about 19.4% of our customers come from California. So
wow.
No, I was actually kind of shocked to see that. So it could make a material difference even to my business if this passed. And of course, I think if it's safe for the safety of kids, I think it would be a reasonable thing to do. So we'll kind of see what happens and see how this is implemented and whether or not it passes. I feel like it won't pass, but it's just signaling this idea of retinol and alpha hydroxy acids and just the legislation around it. And what we saw out of the European retinol quote unquote ban and basically banning the percentages that were allowed in over the counter products. I think this is just signaling that there's probably going to be a lot more regulation around skincare. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, essentially, into that regulation.
Mm-hmm. Now, you brought up a good point, though, is like, should skincare brands be marketing to kids? And the answer to that is like, undoubtedly no. One day we should talk about pharmaceutical companies' direct-to-consumer advertising, but it's a whole nother thing and a monster of a topic. But this other article that we wanted to link out here, because oftentimes the two brands that are most strongly associated with the youngest individuals purchasing it and being popularized by teenagers have been Bubble and Drunk Elephant. And which Drunk Elephant is so expensive, that still blows my mind. But the Bubble skincare, this is also in Happy. And Bubble Skincare forges first brand partnership with Disney and Pixar's Inside Out 2.
Yeah, so these topics are undoubtedly related at this point now, right? So you have Bubble Skincare, which we've done a review of their brand on YouTube before if you want to watch the longer form version of the breakdown. And they really do have some really great products. And the packaging is very fun. It's very inviting, and I believe they sell at Walmart, one of their biggest distributors. So very accessible price point and, loud, fun packaging, right? And we kind of, one of our, I would say, constructive criticisms of the brand was around the packaging, that, it really does speak to a younger demographic, despite the products really having kind of like some high performing actives. One of our favorite products was one of their like overnight exfoliants. I forget what the name of the product is, but it was like a kind of like a heavy hitting exfoliant product that they had that I thought was like really kind of a best in class type of product. And our sort of argument was like, well, these have like really kind of like heavy hitting products. However, they're kind of targeting a younger demographic, and I think even an older demographic would benefit from it. And it was sort of interesting, like after we posted that video, they did like an April Fool's prank, and maybe we can like flash it on the screen if we can find the image if you're watching on YouTube. But they did like an April Fool's prank about how they were coming out with like a neutral packaging line. And they were like, kind of the commentary on it was essentially like, we would never do this. Like, we would never change like who we are. Like, we have serious ingredients and like unserious packaging, and like that's who we are. Which I think it's nice to always like embrace who you are and not pivot. Yeah. And I think too many brands try to pivot their core identity based on what other people think about them. So I do appreciate that they kind of stuck to it. But by kind of co-branding here, off of the news with Disney's Pixar Inside and Out, and they actually put like the Inside Out characters on the packaging in these sort of bundles. This is really meant for kids, like kind of through and through. Like only a younger demographic would really want to purchase something like this. Now, when you look at the actual collection itself, it doesn't seem to have like a lot of the heavy hitters. Like it's more of the barrier, like cleansers, moisturizers, and things like that. So, and I believe maybe the Daydream tone and texture serum, which is like more like their vitamin C. So overall, it's kind of more of their basics, but still very fully marketed at kids. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was what I was looking at too here, was which products are they actually using? Which ones are they providing as evidence for this? It's like a kid targeted skincare push. Like I'm agreeing with you, because I don't think there's anything about this movie or the characters that would appeal to the majority of the older population or be relatable, I guess. Like that's kind of just the whole thrust of this, which is a thing, by the way. I found books and heard someone else say that term. It is a real term.
What do you mean?
Thrust.
Oh, yeah. Thrust of it. Somebody commented like you can say crux and thrust. So fair enough.
Fair enough. It exists. So the ingredients in the only one that I think would be controversial was the one that you mentioned too. And that's what I had my eyes on as well. The Daydream Tone and Texture Serum. That was one we actually loved. And I think it was actually one of the ones that we really highlighted in our video, but it had niacinamide, alpha-arbutin, vitamin C. And while the dark spot benefits here may or may not be useful for that demographic, you could position vitamin C as a protecting ingredient. It's possible. So, it does open up that age group to the whole line of the products, but at least I would say the majority of the products that are in this make a little more sense, Mm-hmm. So I do think that some thought was put into it, but it definitely just exemplifies the targeting of that younger generation with skincare in general, which I can't wholeheartedly disagree with. Like, if we could get everyone in their teenage years to wear sunscreen or wash their face, like, that's a tremendous win for skincare enthusiasts and dermatologists all around the world. But ideally, we'd like limit it to more realistic, purposeful things.
What would have been cool is like, they say, okay, well, we know this Sephora trend is happening. We know that kids are buying skincare. We know that kids are buying our products. Why don't we just come out with like a basics, like cleanser, moisturizer, sunscreen, all kind of like barrier and protection, brand it with this, and like kind of speak to the fact that like you didn't put anything with actives in it because like you really want the kids to be out there. Because otherwise, like, there really is no, like, I was trying to think of it, like you said, like, is there any other strategy here other than to target kids? Because there really can't be, because like, if you think about it, like, let's say, for example, you're an adult, like male, right? And you're not gonna, for better or worse, like you're probably not going to buy a product that has an inside and out character on it and put it in your bathroom proudly on your, right next, right on your counter, and then like have people come over and be like, why do you have this, like this kids product? You know what I mean? Like, so I do think, like targeting it at kids, I think it could have been a good opportunity to be like, these are the things that you need as a child. And these are the things that you should embrace as a child, like in trying to like build good routines and good habits, but avoid some of these like exfoliating ingredients and whatnot. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think this co-branding stuff is really interested. We did like look at this article about how, Liquid Death, also did like a co-branding opportunity with Elf Cosmetics, I believe, or one of these other ones. And so I do think like this co-branding with like unrelated industries is sort of interesting. Like the collabs and who you choose to collab with, I think speaks to like what you want your brand to be, right? So I'd like to see more from like industries crossovers that I'm interested in myself,
I would too. Because the reason I like that sort of thing, and I'm looking at the Liquid Death Health thing. I'm sorry, I'm the worst at going off on these rabbit holes as I'm talking. But can I just say, like, Liquid Death is one of the worst misnomers of any beverage company out there. It is neither alcoholic or caffeinated, and it's supposed to be this like very gentle, hydrating, natural water. It is the dumbest, most unrepresentative name for a beverage. I like it decently, but
it is the smartest. So the argument would be that it is the smartest branding of all time. So Liquid Death came onto the scene. I think it's like Alps, like Swiss Alps water or something. I don't know where they get their water from, but it's like somewhere foreign or whatever. And Liquid Death exploded on the scene, right, with their water. And in fact, like, I think that they recently closed a fundraising round at a $1.4 billion valuation. So in fact, like Liquid Death in the marketing world is looked at as one of the most genius marketing strategies by putting like this like sort of innocuous water in cans and heavily branding around the cool factor. It worked phenomenally well for them, and they're like considered ultimately marketing geniuses by the entire industry.
That's fine. It's just like it's like branding your foot cream as like, I don't know, like the gala of your cleansing routine. I don't know. But good job. Kudos to them.
It's risky branding, but it worked phenomenally well for them.
You have to take a risk these days to stand out. But the point of what I was thinking initially, which I got wildly off track, was I like these cross collaborations where you have like Liquid Death and Elf. Like, I like it because even if you believe skincare is valuable, if you believe your skin is valuable, if you can bring people into the conversation who wouldn't otherwise be in the conversation, people in the skincare world are hyper aware of skin. The majority, and we say this all the time, the majority of people we see in real life, and even those who come into the dermatologist, really don't pay attention to their skin, their skincare routine. The majority of people probably don't wash their face if they don't wear makeup. And so the more you can like create a relatable conversation to someone who is external, and that's kind of like where I'm going with this Kelly Slater thing too, is that I think is incredibly valuable. That's why sometimes I think it's actually valuable to say like the conversation or start a video with like guys or hey dudes, something like that's generalizable, stereotypical, but brings a group of people who wouldn't really pay attention otherwise in a large scale. It gets their attention and lets them realize that this should be something that they're paying attention to. So I kind of like that whole cross-branding collaboration thing. That's not typical.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do think that that surprise and delight of like bringing in like two worlds that maybe seem so different can bring in this whole new audience of people that can now be skincare enthusiasts or at least think about their skin, right? And I truly do love that. And we actually thought like sort of in our branding exercise for Remedy, like what brands that are not skincare brands like speak to like what our ethos are as a brand. And we put together like sort of a list of brands we thought, you know, had similar, and then those would be like brands I think would be potential like collab brands with us in the future. So I do think it's like it is a meaningful exercise. And I think I always say like people are like, anytime I do like a crossover with like us, another influencer that's like not in our space, like I just kind of like, and they're like, oh my God, like these two together, like I never thought I would see these two together. Like, whoa, like my two hobbies or two worlds are like sort of colliding here. So I think people tend to like love when they see somebody that's like not, that they don't expect to see together from like their two different interests. And, you know, we've talked about that before. So let's talk about this Kelly Slater thing, because that's like more your world. First of all, like who is this person? Because I always criticize you for not knowing people. I have no idea who this is. So tell me who this is. Give me the background and why this is important.
Yeah, we have a very different like demographic of people we watch. So Kelly Slater, he is considered perhaps the GOAT, greatest of all time in the surfing world. If nothing else, he is legendary for his surf style, and he is retiring or has retired again, but probably officially this time. He did not make some of the cutoffs for one of the larger surf competitions, and there was a lot of fan farewell as he made his exit. So very naturally, he has, I've been reading through the website and I don't know if it's like 100% his brand or if it's like a brand he's just very partnering with, but it's referred to as his brand. And he's coming out with a sunscreen and moisturizer. And he has some clothing too. But I am excited because just like we talked about in a video yet to be released about the conversation around active sunscreens, like there's a lot of give and take with that. Like active sunscreens are either seemingly irritating on your eyes, they don't blend, like they always have a downfall. And I don't actually expect his to be much different, but I applaud his desire to come out with sunscreens and make sure it's true to his vision. And of course, being a surfer, he's like hyper aware and very cautious when it comes to ingredients and how it impacts the environment and the ocean. But that's because it's extremely important to him. Like that's his life, his world. And oftentimes I think people, especially in the skincare world, think of outdoor enthusiasts, at least a few years ago, think of the idea of a surfer or someone like that. You're like, oh, that's bad for your skin. It's terrible for your skin. I think he, in this article, even said, it's amazing that I even still have skin. But I find that most surfers are extremely hyper aware of their skin health. And they actually do an amazing job with their sunscreen because they are, thankfully, I think even just within the community, very aware of the damage of the sun to their skin. So I think it's just a good representation of the outside athletic world space that he's at least trying to create something that he feels would be valuable, protect the skin. And I'm definitely going to be buying this. It's only on pre-order now. I wanted to have it before we talked, but it's just a pre-purchase pre-order. But it's non-nano zinc. I'm expecting something pretty Cassidy because of it. But again, I applaud him for bringing this forward.
Yeah, I'm like on their website right now as you're talking through this. And so it looks like they have two products right now. One is a moisturizer serum gel, and the other one is an SPF 30 sunscreen that is purely zinc based. It doesn't look like it has any boosters in it. It's got squalane, and it doesn't seem to have any fragrances or anything in it. So pretty straightforward. And if this is like a high performance, it's 40 minutes of water resistance, and they're using vegan vegan squalane, of course, and they're really kind of focusing on more of that clean approach, but more probably, like you said, environmentally related due to his. Oh, and they also have an SPF 50 sunscreen as well. So I apologize. So they have 3 products. Yeah, let's buy them and try them and see, because like I said, like I have patients that come in the office and they always ask me about like performance sunscreens when they're out running, and I don't have good answers for them. So maybe this is the answer. Now, I'm assuming this SPF 50 one is really going to be casty because not only does it have zinc, it also has titanium. So those tend to be really tough ones, but 80 minutes of water resistance. So this is more like that high performance type of sunscreen that Dr. Maxfield will ultimately love. Now, I think their serum gel moisturizer at $48 is a little pricey, but we'll see. I don't know, but I think their sunscreens could be really interesting at their price point.
Yeah, me too. So sunscreen's purchased. I also didn't buy the moisturizer. I'm sure it's good, but it is a little pricey. Yeah, but anyway, that's it for him. I love watching the sport. Can't wait to see those hit.
Nice. Yeah. Remember when I almost drowned?
Forever I'll remember. Your bravery.
Let's talk about this topic. This is something very kind of near and dear to you. This is Pfizer reports a patient death in their Duchenne gene therapy study. So first of all, what is Duchenne's muscular dystrophy? And what does the life of somebody with Duchenne muscular dystrophy look like? And what does this new gene therapy mean for both this condition and skin conditions, dermatology, any health condition in general, for the world?
Right. So this one's a very personal story for me. So I'd sent this to you earlier in the week, and I was like, I want to talk about this because for me, I've always been the type of person, and you've probably observed this. I have about 2 friends at any given moment in my life, and I'm completely content with that. And so in, elementary school, middle school, early high school, I had 2 friends, and they both had muscular dystrophy, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. This disease is a condition where on the X chromosome, you lack a large gene, one of the largest genes out there called dystrophin, and that allows your muscles to be intact, to repair themselves. And so for these individuals, and there's multiple types, but of muscular dystrophy, with Duchenne's, their muscles cannot repair. Over time, the muscles just turn into fibrous, fatty scar. And although life expectancy has actually increased a tremendous amount over the last 10 years, the average lifespan for someone like this was like in their teens back when I was a kid. And for them, it was true for both of them. I think it's actually been a long time, but I think they passed when they were 12 and 15 respectively. I think I was 13. But it changed my whole perspective on life. And for anyone out there who has experienced death in any close capacity, like it adds a level of depth to your idea of the world around you. And it allows you to like take things into a more serious or nature. I don't know, just like if you've ever met somebody, even patients, when they come in, they talk about their children dying, like all of a sudden you can like drop it another level. And there's like this somber moment and somber realization and somber capacity within their character. And so for me, I developed that at an early age. And my whole perspective through high school, I actually had a difficult time in high school because of their passing. But for then on, it was like a very eternity. Like there was a lot of life beyond the moment vision, and I've carried that with me. But that's just my personal relatability to it. If it's on YouTube, it might show up a picture of us and me and them. I already talked to their mom ahead of time, like a couple of years ago, so I know it's okay with her. But the significance of this study isn't actually the failure within this particular example, although it's tragic nonetheless. But gene therapy, this gene deletion is actually thought to be one of the more simple gene corrections because it's easily sequenced. And this actual ingredient or medication that they're using in this study, and I looked at some of their other studies, it basically piggybacks a gene or a truncated version of the gene onto a virus. And then you put it into a person. And this sounds absolutely crazy, but actually functionally what happens, viruses, because they invade our cells, just like they invade a computer, we think we can use that to our advantage. Whether or not we'll successfully do that, I think time will tell. But we see this in the melanoma space as well, with the attachment of therapy for melanomas onto viruses that are still being perfected if possible. And so they attach this gene onto this virus, and then they put it into a person, and it goes into their cells. And the hope is that by incorporating a gene replacement it will actually replace the non-functioning gene in every cell in your body, or at least the functional cells. And so like theoretically, it has a monstrous upside, a massive upside that hopefully has never been reproduced, or has never been produced to date. Now, the studies beforehand, even in the successful individuals, you would think that if you replace the gene, you would have perfect muscles. Like same would go for any condition now at this point where there's any genetic defect. But there's only been marginal, modest benefit, even in the successful studies with this particular medication. And the reason that this is important is twofold, I think. One is it does provide a level of hope. Like whenever we talk about these new and novel, non-traditional treatments, I think there's a lot of theoretical upside. Like the technology in the world we live in is like the Neuralink is an example of just like a wow moment. I can't believe we're actually living in a world where that happens. But like for people who have these genetic defects and serious conditions that like really affect their lives, it provides them some amount of hope where there's a potential on the horizon for something dramatic and life-changing. And I think that's incredibly valuable. And it's kind of nice to highlight one of these unusual mechanisms that maybe there's something out there. Maybe there will be something soon for you that could be life-changing. But then also what we see is a lot of new ingredients in medical journals, and it always looks extremely promising and extremely hopeful. And unfortunately, a lot of them just don't pan out. We've seen this with a lot of prescription ingredients, prescription medications, where on paper they look amazing, and then they get to the real world. And it's like, okay, well, it didn't quite deliver like we thought. And unfortunately, a lot of them go by the wayside. So anyway, I thought it was just a really extravagant example of what hope is on the horizon for some people with medical conditions. And unfortunately, the limitations, not only in their effectiveness, but the safety along the way as we collectively as a society try to conquer different diseases.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that we're even having this conversation, you know, Duchenne's was widely considered, at least even in my training, med school, not too long ago, that there was essentially no treatment. You'd become wheelchair bound quickly and then soon thereafter pass away. And, you know, I think the fact that we're even having a conversation about potential intervention that could be life changing and even making any modest improvement. I mean, a lot of times we look at, and this is, you know, maybe a more debatable topic, but when I was always kind of surprised by when I was doing HEMONC rotations as a med student and even as an intern, the increase in life expectancy from one therapeutic agent was actually not very long. So like some of the things that were considered very groundbreaking would maybe extend life by about a year. But ultimately those people would still pass away from, or they would succumb to the cancer that they had. And, you know, that was considered like a massive breakthrough. You know, you gave the person extra 6 months, and, you know, in the scheme of life, you're thinking, okay, a lifespan of 80 years, like what is 6 months? And, you know, they still had cancer. But for a lot of people, it makes a big difference. It helps them get their affairs in order. It helps them, you know, prepare their family, you know, to get the proper moments in there that they need to. So for them, you know, minutes, hours, days, weeks, all of that makes a big difference when it's your life. And so even a minor difference improvement in something like this can be everything that somebody needs. And so I do think that these advancements are worthwhile, and I'm glad that somebody is working on it. And, you know, and your story of your friends, you know, I think, you know, you have a personal relationship with this condition. And I think any type of advancements that could affect other conditions, because if you could do this for one disease that has one gene, then you could probably replicate this many times over for different types of conditions that maybe are easy to intervene on, as far as like a simple gene deletion or change. So I think it's interesting. And like you said, it is I think a lot of times we're critical of like the pharmaceutical industry, and we're critical and skeptical of things, you know, especially around the vaccine and everything that happened over the past 3 years. But there truly are good things that happen, and there are tremendous advancements that we've made that we now probably take for granted a lot of times. But it is a promising future.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, we'll see what the future holds. Melanoma therapies in our world, again, something that's been revolutionized with modest benefits, but occasionally exceptional miraculous recoveries because of it, with like immunotherapy that really has revolutionized the world of cancer, even if a modest response, an extra few months of life is the norm. Occasionally you get something exceptional out of it.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. We kind of covered some heavy hitting topics today, but thoughts on the retinol ban, AHA ban, and whether or not age restrictions are reasonable, definitely let us know in the comments. What you think about this collab between Disney and Bubble, and overall what you think about and these advancements in gene therapy. Very interesting stuff. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. We appreciate you always.